Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hardware News Recap for the week. In this one, we'll be talking about the memory pricing situation, so still bad. That's about the news. Also, Black Friday apparently not good. One of the manufacturers we were talking with describes it as a bloodbath in terms of sales, not in terms of people crowding the stores and fighting each other over things. But this time, big surprise, stuff is expensive and people can't spend lots of money on consumer products right now, especially as things like RAM prices triple. Additionally, in some good news, Intel Arc GPUs finally get a spot on the market share reports. That's right, Intel Arc is now showing up at 1% on the JPR distribution between NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel, which 1% doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot more than zero. So I guess that's some good news for the week, just to get some more competition in the market. NVIDIA still at 92+% though. And then additionally, we'll be talking about Microsoft's newest Xbox product. That's right, they have something new for the Xbox fan out there. And the new thing that they have is these Crocs. So they're still making stuff. So that's, I mean, look, it's, okay, this one's not electronic, but at least they're doing something that people will buy, I guess. So maybe Xbox will live to see another day and not become Sega just yet. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and their new Duronaut Thermal Paste. Thermal Grizzly claims its Duronaut paste is intended for long-term stability and endurance, focusing on paste longevity in addition to the usual performance focus. Thermal Grizzly's Duronaut paste comes with applicators and spreaders, and ships in numerous tube sizes, aiming to provide a high-end paste for PC builds and daily driven overclocks by enthusiasts. Learn more at the link in the description below. This story requires a quick vocabulary definition for the billionaire tech CEOs and the trillionaire tech companies. There's a word called reality. It's where the rest of us non-trillionaire filthy poors live. And in this so-called reality, in absence of artificial intelligence and artificial reality, turns out November has been a bloodbath so far for computer hardware manufacturers who have shifted their focus largely to AI and data center demand and are now suffering in the consumer side. I'll just pause for a moment of silence while all of us shed tears for them. Okay, that's a long enough moment of silence. In this last week or so, we've been talking to a number of computer hardware manufacturers, many of them who don't make RAM or GPUs and are just kind of caught in the crossfire, making things out of metal and fans, mostly like computer cases and coolers. And we asked them about their sales. And in some cases, we've learned that sales for November, year over year, are down as much as 60%. Now, publicly, Corsair Components, as an example, has seen a stock price fall of 10% year to date as of filming. This changes all the time, of course, with a decline in the last month of about 23% as of December 1st for end of trading prices. Now, Corsair is in the business of selling memory. So again, we can all join together in collectively saying, oh no. Anyway, the smaller companies that don't sell silicon are hurting the most of those we spoke to. One case and cooling manufacturer noted a 55% decline year over year for November sales for hardware. Another manufacturer, primarily of cooling hardware, noted approximately a 50% year-over-year decline. Between 6 companies we spoke with, we were given a range of 30% to 60% decline in sales year over year for hardware that is not silicon related. Not one we spoke to saw equal or greater performance this November over last, at least among the sort of name brand major companies. Now there's one or two kind of exceptions in here we'll get to, but speaking with a few Chinese factories that we know and have visited, we learned that the overall order volume is down for not only computer hardware, but non-computer hardware as well, again related to this thing called reality, which happens outside of data centers, just to make sure if someone like Jensen Huang is wasting his time watching this, he can keep up with the complex topics, such as real life. We called a tempered glass side panel factory in China that we visited before. This particular factory also makes tempered glass for furniture like tables, and they also make windows for office buildings and construction projects. So we called them, gives us a pretty good spread of industries. And the company noted that while real estate glass is overall steady due to ongoing construction in China where they're located, the computer hardware side panel and the furniture sales using tempered glass are both down, and they are both down similarly, about 30% for products that are being exported to the West in particular. Now, one Chinese CPU cooling manufacturer we spoke with has actually seen some growth in this period when the other companies are seeing a decline in sales. That company is focused on budget coolers. We can't name them. It doesn't really narrow it down a lot to say it's a Chinese CPU cooler manufacturer that's focused on budget coolers. There's a few of them right now. There's pretty good ones out there. But we think that they're likely taking some of the market share from the others combined, collectively. Another Chinese CPU cooling manufacturer we spoke with recently got into building cooling solutions for AI and data center products, such as servers that go into data centers. This includes air and water cooling solutions, and that has allowed them to, they say, stabilize by displacing consumer sales with data center. Once again, just kind of showing the domino effect of how the rest of us get completely fucked by this process. Now, during all of this, the company's focused on non-silicon products who weren't able to stabilize, which is most of them we spoke to, especially the major brands you all are familiar with in the enthusiast space that we cover all the time. They seem to be getting sort of screwed the most by the RAM prices, also GPU, but GPU's come down recently. That's going to maybe be temporary, though. One system integrator we spoke with indicated that their contract pricing for completed sticks of memory, because they don't buy the actual like DRAM, obviously they buy the completed stick. They noted that that has become variable with nearly weekly changes right now to pricing in the instances where they haven't locked in longer-term contracts. None of this is a surprise. One of our interview subjects from the tariffs documentary earlier this year, who we can't name, noted to us that memory prices are crushing sales far more than the tariffs ever did, pointing to RAM kits more than doubling in price in just 1 month as an example of why. Now, of course, again, in the real world, where people have to be careful with how much money they spend, this is not a surprise to anybody. So, I mean, it does, on one side of things, especially for the memory companies and absolutely for the silicon fabs, this is a story of cry me a fucking river. But from the consumer side of things, the sales figures just helps kind of put some numbers to what I think everybody's feeling. Money's tighter for a lot of people, prices are going up, and people are being more careful with what they spend, and something like RAM, I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna go buy a stick of RAM I was looking at that was like less than half the price a month ago if I'm basically anybody. There's no way that feels like a good thing to do. And so this is going to be a trend that continues. To quote one of the commenters in our GNCA comments on the YouTube Gemini story we did, quote, "The destruction of society will continue until shareholder value improves." That's right. All right. On that positive note, we'll go to the next story, which is also positive. Up next, AMD CEO Lisa Su recently appeared at a conference where an interview asked her, "Is AI a bubble?" To which she basically replied, "I'm not a bubble, you're a bubble." So in a Wired interview with Lisa Su, Wired asked AMD CEO whether the AI industry is in a bubble and about the fears, I guess, if we're going to take that perspective of it. So here's what she said.
And I will say, Lauren, emphatically from my perspective, no. I find it really interesting when people ask, are we in a bubble? And I'm like, we haven't even gotten started yet.
That's right. You think this is a bubble. You want a bubble? We haven't even gotten started yet with the bubble. The bubble is only just beginning. That's how much of not a bubble. This is not a bubble. We're just getting started with the bubble. That comes later. Wired then asked Sue if she thinks the concerns over the bubble are overstated. I'm getting semantic satiation for bubble, 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 bubble. It sounds less like a word every time I say it.
I do think the concerns are somewhat overstated, and that's probably because we're not used to bets this big. Yes, are we investing big? Yes, we are. But we are investing big at the right time because of the technology capability. And you have to assume that the people who are running these companies are very rational, smart people.
Now we checked, and that pause was like maybe 1.5 seconds, but man, it was painful. It was really painful. So from Lisa Su, rumors of an AI industry demise are greatly exaggerated at this point, while Jensen runs around and does his own interview and talk show circuit, I guess, about the defense industry. Just to be clear, from what we've seen in our own comments section, I don't really think the right framing here is a fear of a bubble popping. I think the right framing for consumers is more of a giddy gleefulness that it will pop at some point. The only thing that is not so gleeful with that is the part where the billionaires are going to make out without any problems and everybody else gets fucked. That's the part that sucks. Unfortunately, yeah, it'll be billionaires like Su, Juan, Altman who walk away unscathed. And the rest of the interview mostly contains kind of pointless meandering about demand and buzzwords and inference and training, and this is amazing technology and the best thing that's ever existed in her lifetime and whatever. Meanwhile, this aligns with Jensen Huang's recent appearances on Joe Rogan and a couple of other different interviews and shows and podcasts and things where he has continually ramped up the rhetoric about defense contracting applications for NVIDIA's AI. And we'll talk about that more in a separate piece. I don't know if it'll be here or GNCA, but these companies at this point, they've moved beyond not only gamers. I mean, we knew that. Like that, they were going that direction for a little while. But now they are also moving past their business workstation users. And so it's only data center, and NVIDIA's really got its sights set on defense right now, which is like, I mean, I guess that's the only thing left after you suck up all the other money, so it makes sense. AMD's not quite there yet. I haven't seen anything with AMD where they're really spending the amount of time talking about those types of military applications as NVIDIA. But AMD, you see this interview with Lisa Su talking about how waxing poetic about AI, and I know it's her job to like make stock go up, but it's just like, cool, okay. I guess they're all in it together, aren't they? This kind of sucks for consumers. So anyway, AMD's just kind of pumping the bubble. At one point in the interview, Lisa Su was asked if the basically AI gold rush is predicated on a if we build it, they will come mentality, meaning that there's not actual real demand right now, but there might be. And here's what she said.
I think there really is real demand from the standpoint of there are so many more things that we would want to do if there was more computing capability out there. And I think you hear that from just being sort of in the trenches. Like the way I view it is, I spend a lot of time with our top customers, sort of the top thought leaders in the area, and every conversation is like, yes, it's great where AI is today, but we know it's not yet good enough. Like we know that there's more innovation that can be done.
There was some more kind of wandering around in that answer too. She didn't answer it. It doesn't answer anything. So she said the demand's real. Okay, so anyway, let's go to the next topic. Up next, in a new report from John Petty Research, the NVIDIA market share in add-in board market share of video cards has slightly gone down in this most recent update. Intel, actually, the ARC GPUs have now taken a roughly 1% slice of the AIB distribution for this newest report, which is pretty interesting. JPR's chart indicates that NVIDIA's share has decreased from almost 94% in second quarter 25 to around 92% in third quarter 2025. Really, the end is near here for NVIDIA. It's like 92% isn't even a total absolute domination and monopoly, so it's just... Okay. So NVIDIA has ceded some of that delta to AMD and Intel. JPR cites AMD as increasing 0.8 percentage points from last quarter, with Intel's up 0.4 percentage points. Because of the rounding here, obviously the math gets a little fuzzy down to the decimal places. Attach rate, or the amount of discrete add-in boards per system, remained relatively stable at a sharp climb in third quarter 2024. Anything over 100% means more than one GPU, one add-in board per system. JPR says, quote, the desktop PC CPU market, this is CPUs now, decreased 7.6% year to year and increased 3.9% quarter to quarter, end quote. In a break from its usual heavy focus on industry-specific issues, JPR, when analyzing some of the change that's negative here, wrote this in a factor in its report alongside notes of pre-tariff order buffering and front-loading. They said, quote, we also have to worry about an inflation-driven recession due to the socioeconomic turmoil created by the Trump administration, end quote. And again, just as someone who's reported on a lot of the JPR reports over more than a decade now, this is a bit of an abnormal break for them to make this kind of commentary. So pretty interesting. They've got the full report, or at least the short version of it, on their website if you want to read more. Up next, Samsung is looking to potentially change some of its memory contracts towards quarterly pricing, or in the very least, less long-term pricing than it has had, reducing from yearly or nearly yearly with 3-quarter increments in some cases previously, from what we understand. So this would mean greater volatility in memory pricing for the companies that are buying it from Samsung and then putting it into something to sell to you later. So that would affect your pricing as well as a consumer, of course. In particular, this will impact devices with fixed memory capacities, from what we understand so far. So this would be things like cell phones, consoles, things where there's kind of a known amount of memory on a device, and now its contract price is potentially changing more frequently. Initially found via TPU, but read from the original source SE Daily in Korea, and then translated via Google Translate, the story notes that Samsung's semiconductor and mobile experience, or its phone business units, are dueling over the costs and supply. SE Daily provided via, again, machine translation, an example of the 12GB LPDDR5X found in some of Samsung's Galaxy series devices, citing a $70 price at the end of November, up from $33 at the beginning of the year. The Korean publication says that HBM demand for so-called AI accelerators has driven cost up elsewhere in the business. As a reminder, makers of ChatGPT OpenAI have already committed to buying 40% of the global wafer supply reserved for memory, which has been one of the primary reasons normal people are completely fucked right now. Via machine translation, the SE Daily Post said, quote, according to industry sources on the first, Samsung Electronics Semiconductor Division recently discussed a long-term supply agreement with the mobile division for mobile DRAM for a period exceeding 1 year, but maintained its existing 3-month quarterly contract. However, a broad agreement was reached on the minimum supply volume for next year, preventing the worst-case scenario of the mobile division being unable to secure mobile DRAM, end quote. SE Daily also highlighted a 2.5 percentage point increase year over year of what translates to, they call it raw material purchases for the semiconductor division. It noted that volume is being consumed primarily by HBM, or high bandwidth memory, which is commonly found in server GPUs, server devices, data centers, and LPDDR volume. To close out this series of memory-related pricing fuckery, TrendForce has published a new report revising some of its previous projections for 2026 pricing for memory and devices. The TrendForce report is paywalled, but there are stills saved by Tech PowerUp. The charts saved by TPU highlight that game consoles were on track for a demand growth of 9.7% projected in 2025 and negative 3.5% in 2026. But the report has been revised to reduce to a 5.8% growth for this year and a negative 4.4% demand growth for 2026. The firm also revised notebook demand growth to go from positive to negative in 2026. Again, all these numbers are the metric of, they call it, demand growth. The second chart indicates the PS5 Pro's BOM cost, or bill of materials cost, increase percent for first quarter 25 versus third quarter 26 as changing 15%. The chart has a, quote, DRAM plus SSD BOM percent, end quote, cited as 36% in third quarter 26. The Switch 2 is noted at 23% for this category, with the Xbox Series whatever, because let's face it, the name of it doesn't matter at this point, cited at 42%. The BOM cost increase percent is noted as 15% and 17% for these other two devices. As with everything, this will be passed on to the consumers, and out of all these companies making consoles, Microsoft probably gets the least pity here, because Microsoft is heavily invested and is a major contributor to OpenAI. So Microsoft is, for all the problems that Xbox already has, they are making it worse by contributing to the demand drivers outside of gaming that are skyrocketing potentially the costs and or price of the Xbox. Now, to be fair, that percentage number shown on the table for Xbox is huge as compared to the other devices. And we felt like there was more to the story, so we sent a camera operator out into the field to ask one of the memory suppliers why Xbox was impacted so heavily. Here's what he said. He's an executive from one of the memory companies.
Fuck Microsoft! Okay. Fuck!
The right people to blame here are the LLM companies, the so-called AI companies, the data centers who are moving as much computing as humanly possible into a Smaug-like hoard in a mountain somewhere of RAM and GPUs instead of the treasures that Smaug has in Lord of the Rings. So that's where we are. Of course, this might mean, this is something I've been kind of working through lately in my no one asked me time. It might mean that the data centers and the computing companies are able to outbid consumers in such a way that they can just suck all this stuff into data centers, and move as much computing as humanly possible to software as a service or SaaS business models. So if it gets too expensive to build a computer again, suddenly they might be able to say, hey, it's pretty expensive to buy that RAM because we have it all, so why don't you rent it from us every month instead? And instead of downloading RAM now, you can just stream it. I guess that's kind of where we're going with this, and you'll be able to do your applications through a data center and pay for it every month or something, because there's obviously a huge conflict in supply for who wants it and where it's going. So anyway, that's enough existential levels of computing RAM prices. Let's move on to something better than this, and we'll get another story that's not memory related. Let's just see what we have here. The RAM pricing crisis has only just started, Team Group GM warns. Nope, we're not doing this, nope. Up next, some interesting GPU news. So at a CAD conference in China, the GPU vendor Xian unveiled its latest line of what they say is 5nm Fuxi graphics cards or GPUs. So the newest Fuxi graphics cards claim to be the first mass-produced GPUs based on Imagination Technologies' IP-licensed IMG DXD architecture. Imagination Technologies, you may know the name from past Apple products. The Fuxi line will come in A0 and B0 variants. Information on specs is limited, but a report from John Petty Research suggests the Fuxi A0 will have 12 gigabytes of memory, while being aimed towards rendering and gaming. The Fuxi B0 supposedly offers an added NPU capable of FP8 precision. The IMG DXD architecture features support for DirectX 11, Vulkan, and OpenGL, as well as RISC-V based firmware and hyperlane virtualization. The A0 cards utilize a dual slot 2-fan design, and the B0 cards that were shown at least will use a blower-style fan typical of server GPUs. They're notably different from the company's prior XDX 121 and 151 GPUs, which remind us of the low-end cards like NVIDIA's GT 1010. These are the first cards released since Xian's severe financial difficulties in September of 2024, which caused a drastic organizational restructuring. As for performance, JPR notes, quote, at the conference, the company showed the Fuxi A0 with a ray-traced rendering demo that achieved about 35 FPS, end quote. Although that said, we don't have full details on things like resolution, scene complexity, upscaling techniques, and basically the graphics settings. According to WCCF Tech, quote, the chip maker also stated that the A0 model is capable of running Black Myth Wukong at a very good frame rate, end quote, whatever the fuck that means. Black Myth is specifically a pretty heavy game to run, so if there's any truth at all to that, I mean, on an unproven brand's GPU, drivers and architecture and everything factored in, if they can run a game like that at 20 FPS, like even if it's not playable, that's still something that might be considered very good, just because it's kind of like getting it to run at all is the first major hurdle, as we learned with Intel Arc for the Alchemist line of GPUs, the original line. Anyway, so we would need to test any performance claims firsthand, of course. We'll try to get anything in, just because any GPU from a company that's not NVIDIA or AMD in particular is interesting just by default. And that includes Intel, because anything who's not an incumbent, that could shake things up if it actually works out for them. But a lot of times, it's just kind of fun to work on new hardware. So we'll do our best to get these in. Up next, HAVN fixed its typo in response to our recent HAVN BF360 review, where we looked at the computer case. In case you missed it, here's what we said. And they even have recommended cable routing paths. That's right. In fact, they have such strong recommendations for this that they've recommended where you run your cables all throughout the case. Just all kinds of recommendations. It sure would suck if they put that on all of them. In response, the company posted a statement on its website saying, quote, to correct this, we are sending affected customers a sticker that covers the mistake. The sticker is provided free of charge and includes free shipping, end quote. HAVN says that all future batches are corrected as well. If you happen to care about the recommended typo, then our recommendation is to go to the website, fill out the form, and then you can get the recommended stickers instead. It's refreshing as always to see manufacturers actually responding to stuff like this, even when it's as small as a typo all over the back of the case. But look, it's still it's a small thing out of all of the things to consider for a case, and it's nice to see them offer at least a fix for it. Sony silently updated the thermal interface and the design of it for its PS5 Slim, both digital and disc variants, in response to users' allegations of liquid metal leaking in the systems previously. And found via modificator Casper on Twitter, the newly improved design uses more defined etchings and walls for anti-leak guards that should hold the liquid metal better in place, presumably decreasing the chances of spillage. The hardware modder also spotted differences in the chip and the VRM. He claims the power delivery has been revised from 7 to 5 phases, and this maybe suggests more efficient power delivery or power requirements with the latest models. We haven't inspected the FETs for the current capability or pulled up the data sheets for the differences, but these are some of the changes that Sony's made to its now late-stage PS5. Up next, Chinese computer hardware company and esports brand Thunder Robot unveiled its, as they call it, Black Warrior Hunting Blade Pro, end quote, which sounds sort of like they want to be the next Razer or something with edgy names like that. This is a pre-built PC, but the thing that's actually interesting is it's powered by a China-made Hygon C86-4G CPU. The x86 compatible CPU reportedly utilizes 16 cores, 32 threads, 32 megabytes of L3 cache, a 2.8 gigahertz base clock, and also offers support for PCIe Gen 5 and DDR5. PC Gamer notes that Hygon C86 CPUs were actually derived from first-generation Zen architecture through a complicated 2016 licensing agreement with AMD. I think we actually covered that back when that happened. And AMD actually owns a 30% stake in the company. Letters of Innovation on WeChat claims, quote, in general, single-core performance is in line with AMD's Zen architecture, and multi-core has reached the Intel i7-10700 level, end quote. And the WeChat post also puts V-Ray rendering performance between that of an i7-13700 and i7-14700K. The new pre-built claims to be the, as they say, quote, first domestically produced gaming PC, end quote, and represents a significant milestone for the China market. Up next, the collaboration we've all been waiting for. Microsoft has new Xbox hardware, and this time it's Crocs. It doesn't have electronics. It might be for the best, actually. But anyway, the Crocs for Xbox follow up the previous, was it Windows XP Crocs? They're on a Crocs kick right now, and the tweet and release video are very compelling for these. Xbox says, quote, finally, a controller for your feet, end quote. Look, everyone's got their, we're not even gonna touch this one, all right? There's too many easy jokes here. Let's just move on. We don't need to talk about let's keep going. The limited edition controller-themed Croc clogs come in black with Xbox green accents and branding seen throughout. Each shoe comes with the standard ABXY button layout, a directional D-pad, 2 joysticks, and the Xbox Home Start and Select buttons, which should make it easy to adapt to for those with controller muscle memory. Thankfully, these Crocs were, as they say, quote, designed with gamers in mind, end quote. They come with game mode enabled. The inside soles notate player left and player right. Just in case you get confused, it'll help you get them on the right foot. The partnership also released the Xbox 5-pack Gibbets Charms, featuring Croc accessories from Halo, Fallout, Doom, World of Warcraft, and Sea of Thieves. The Xbox Crocs are available for $80 on the Crocs website and $20 for the Charm Pack sold separately. So there you go. We had like half an episode of just really kind of depressing news about memory prices and the economy in general, but we ended on Crocs. So anyway, we're going to close it out there. Thanks for watching. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to help us out directly, or patreon.com/gamersnexus. Subscribe for more. We'll see you all next time.